just a quick video I wanted to make to show some of the things that I'm using QCustomPlot for. Maybe it'll give other people ideas what they could use it for. But just a couple projects. So this first one here is I'm trying to implement a Perceptron. So that's kind of, it's like the baby brother to a neural net. It can classify datasets where the classes are linearly separable. So I've got this iris dataset. It's I grabbed it from the UCI dataset database, and we've got basically 3 classes of flower species. This iris setosa, versicolor, and virginica, and then you've got different attributes like it's like petal length, petal width, sepal length, and sepal width, and you're trying to classify which flower species a flower belongs to if you have this data and then you just measured some other flower out in a field that you know is one of these 3 species. So let's go and run this. Here's our little QCustomPlot, and we see we've got some attributes, some classes. I might make a video for this, I guess. There's a couple things on here people would like, but let's go ahead and plot petal length versus petal width for iris setosa, and then let's put some of these others on here. So just, actually I don't like those colors. That's a little better. Just looking at the plot here, we can see the iris setosa is linearly separable from these 2 classes, the versicolor and virginica. But the versicolor and virginica, we can't tell those apart. Not using a Perceptron, we can't. Because you see how they're intermingled. And it shows up even more with some of the other attributes actually. So, well, sometimes you get a poor color plotting the way I'm doing it. Let's try that again. Yeah, right now every time I plot it calls the random color function. I didn't want to give it a list of colors to go through, which might have avoided this, just because if I had more classes then maybe it'd run out of colors. Right now it plots it randomly each and every time. So may the odds be ever in your favor that you don't end up with something that looks exactly the same as the other. I'll have to fix that sometime. But anyways, for visualizing your data, that's pretty helpful. And being able to just generate the plot on the fly like that too. For using QCustomPlot for that. So if you're doing any sort of data visualization, maybe you would consider it if you're using Q. Pretty helpful. This one's kind of fun. I haven't finished the rest of this yet though. I don't output anything, so there's no way to tell that you actually trained it. So still a work in progress. But the plotting here is done. Kinda cool. Let's close that though. Let's go to the next project. The Temp Sensor. I like to build on the projects. So open our project file. So this is the same the temperature sensor project from before, but now I've got a button on there to launch a plot of the data. So now we can visualize the data as we're collecting it. So real-time plotting. Let's make that a little bigger. And I'm going to let this get a little more data so that you can see it, because otherwise I'm just going to be talking while we're waiting for this to collect data. So hold on a little bit. So I've let this run a little bit, and I got a glass of water, and we're going to test the sensor in this. It seems to be cooling off a little bit already, but let's test it in the glass, and we're going to see that it drops quite a bit. And let's let this level out. And you can imagine this here. This is the just using that same DS18 sensor. But say you had a model rocket and you wanted to put an accelerometer or maybe an altimeter on it, and you were relaying that data back to your laptop, and you wanted to plot the data in real time. Well, you could use QCustomPlot, use it for something like that. I'm sure there's programs out there that already do that, but hey, if you're doing it yourself, QCustomPlot is a nice solution. Easy to use. And you can actually get some interesting effects with the sensor here. Kind of sidetrack a bit, but looks like it's, oh, that's the other thing I just noticed. If I go switch a tab here, let's move that, and then let's go back down. Oh, it's changed its position. I don't think I set the position of that. I might have to change some setting on that. That's interesting. I just noticed that. But looks like the temperature sensor has leveled out, and now let's take it out and warm it up a bit. So we're going to see it rise. It just jumped up, and now it's going to cool back down a bit because it just got warmed up just on the very outside of the piece of steel that's touching the sensor. I'll put a picture of it. So it's just the outside that's been warmed up on that steel, and the core of it is still at that steady state that we reached. Looks like it was around 59 or so. And so the outside was transmitting the heat to the sensor, which we see in that rise. And then once we stop warming it up, the core of it is cooling it back down. And now the entire steel here is warming up again, so it's going to slowly rise to room temperature. Actually, I just touched it, so I got a little warmer, but it's going to go ahead and rise back to room temperature. So you can kind of see some of the effect that steel plug has on the sensor, on how it's reading the data. So that's kind of interesting to see that in the plot. I'm not going to let that keep running much longer. But if you're trying to visualize the data, trying to make a plot for a presentation, and you're already using QCustomPlot is a pretty good solution and something you might want to consider using.